Okay, hello everyone. It is 12 o'clock, so I think we'll get started. Well, welcome to our fifth and last session of Bike Walk Civics. Today I have opened up the lines to make sure that we didn't have any glitches. So if you are not speaking or presenting, if you would please mute yourself so that we don't have any feedback. All right. So Bike Walk Civics is brought to you by the Wisconsin Bike Fed, and with special thanks to the American Heart Association for help planning, pay for the planning of this session. Today's session is Forward Building an Advocacy Agenda, Learning from Local Wins. I wanted to see if Dave Cheslevich was here today. So anyhow, today Dave was going to talk to us about some of the things that are happening with the Bike Fed. The first is Lobby Day. That's coming up April 13th in Madison at the Concord Hotel. There's a presentation on the legislative priorities and a networking and lunch. And then we'll spend the afternoon visiting with our legislators and followed by a Lobby Day reception from 4 to 6 p.m. So you can find all the information about signing up for Lobby Day on our website under the Events tab. The next thing that we're really excited about is the Bike Summit. It will take place this season in May 4th in Milwaukee at the UWM. We'll be working with UWM School of Continuing Education. There's a wide variety of topics, all with the bicycle equity focus. Featured speakers are Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett, Melody Hoffman, PhD, author of Bike Lanes Are White Lanes, Robert Henkin, President of Public Policy and Forum, and Anthony Taylor, founding member of Major Taylor Cycling Club of Minnesota and National Brotherhood of Cyclists. And then we also want to call your attention to Wisconsin Bike Week, which will take place the first week in June all across the state. There are activities and events planned. They'll be listed on our website as they become available, so you can check out, the events tab on our website for Bike Week. And if you'd like to plan some activities for your community, then please feel free to contact me at my email. So now I'd like to introduce to you James Longhurst. James is a historian of urban and environmental policy and the author of Bike Battles, A History of Sharing the American Road. He's an associate professor at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse with a PhD in history and policy from Carnegie Mellon University. His first book, Citizen Environmentalist, describes the rise of local environmental organizing in Pittsburgh in the United States in the 1960s and 70s. So now I'm going to turn the screen over to Dave, or I'm sorry, to Jim.
Hi, Carolyn. Thank you very much. We still have, we still have your screen.
Yeah, I'm just
up, and we're switching over to mine.
There you go. Okay, I see your screen. If you have questions for James, then feel free to type them in the chat box, and we'll be sure to have time to answer all of those.
Carolyn, do you have my screen now?
I'm sorry. Yes, we see your screen.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you very much for the introduction, and I'll say that I have many hats when it comes to bicycle topics, but today I'm wearing my hat as a local bike advocate. And when Carolyn asked me to talk about wins and victories in La Crosse, I was actually taken aback for a second because, as I'm sure you know, local bike advocacy can be very frustrating. At the time, I was kind of beating myself up about how La Crosse bike advocacy has been losing to WSDOT a lot, so it was difficult to think about wins. But one thing that we do have is some mutually beneficial collaborations and coalitions that work really well to build social and political capital for bike and walk advocacy in populations that don't bike themselves. I'd like to talk about two of these that I'm involved in. There are other great collaborations and events like the Lacrosse Omnium and a mountain bike trail network and Beer by Bike Brigade, but I'm going to talk about the ones that I'm involved in today. The state of the city is that Lacrosse is a dense river town. It's a very early silver bike-friendly community, sorry Milwaukee, with the second highest bike-to-work rate in the state and many different bike communities and orgs. We also have an excellent bike ped master plan from 2012 at the city level, which calls for a dense network of bike lanes, routes, and neighborhood greenways, and significant investment for pedestrian-friendly intersections. At the same time, it's now been 5 years since that plan was contracted for and by the city and approved by City Council. And while there is a committee charged with implementation, the money allocated is minuscule and very little, almost nothing really has been built out of this. So while we wait, what do we do in the meantime to build political support to actually implement this plan? I'd like to talk about two things today. The first is bicycle lacrosse. This is a 7-year-old mutually beneficial collaboration between bike volunteers and advocates and the local Convention and Visitors Bureau. And these are really two different groups. There are no cyclists at the Bureau. Some of the people we work with don't even own bicycles, which is very strange. It started out with a former city planner plus a local bike advocate and the former director of the CVB. Two of those three have either moved away or retired, but the project they started continues. The volunteers provide the CVB with content like photos and maps and routes and descriptive text. The CVB then puts that content out on social media, advertising, promotional material, and professional promotional videos. Carolyn's going to share a link to one of those in the text. Each side in this collaboration has something that the other doesn't have. The volunteers bring knowledge of the local roads and they produce maps and photos for the bicyclelacrosse.com website. This is how these started out as PDFs, and they're now on Ride with GPS, which is a turn-by-turn smartphone. It promotes year-round visitors to the driftless region, means that visitors can come in and ride local roads without knowing where to ride. It began with this longer road cycling, but is expanding to include trails, mountain bikes, and even in-town bike routes for visitors or new riders. So that's one part of it, is the maps. And another part is the Labor Day Bike Fest. Every Labor Day weekend for 7 years, 4 straight days of completely free bicycling, supported by sponsors by the CVB, grant from the State Department of Tourism, local hotels and restaurants, obviously CVB supporters, but also it pulls in history groups, cultural groups, WISCOR, and bike advocacy, all of which have their own events over the 4 days. Here's several photos of course, ice cream rides are the most popular. Here's an ice cream tour to the sweet shop. Kids and people out on bikes, and people meeting in Cameron Park. The end result is that our Convention and Visitors Bureau capitalizes on the volunteer work of bike advocates, and they end up promoting lacrosse with images of cycling along with other things that they promote. And the folks at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, it's hard to look at them and believe that they're not cyclists, but they really don't have this knowledge themselves. And it ends up that they are promoting these images of cycling to the Chamber of Commerce, to hotels and restaurants, who start to identify recreational cycling as a revenue stream and a livable city as a goal to draw visitors, employers, and employees. Now, sometimes it's quite difficult. There's several of us who basically have a second unpaid job, maybe third unpaid job, working for the Convention and Visitors Bureau, staffing tables like this. But I like the results. And I think that this is a good example. This is a photo that was taken out on a ride by bike advocates. People are just out having fun. and supplied to the Convention and Visitors Bureau along with the routes to guide visitors onto it. And it became really a symbol for lacrosse and biking in the region. And it gets promoted through the Convention Visitors Bureau all the way up to Travel Wisconsin, which is the state level promotional group. Another thing I can talk about that's been, I think, successful for us is the Mayor's Ride, or Ride with the Mayor, organized through the Wisconsin Bike Fed. We have a mayor who gets it here, but in a strange twist of fate, lacrosse is actually a weak mayor system where the council has almost all the power. So to build political capital in support of funding the completion of the Bike Ped Master Plan, we've been organizing annual short rides, touring locations of bike ped transit infrastructure. We head out with the mayor and whatever electeds who will go with us, and we try to split the stops between successes that have already been built and that people might not know about, and unaddressed problems or places where we might need improvements. And here's both the press, you see the TV in the background at the beginning of the ride, but then also stopping along the way and talking about problems or opportunities. There's been some real unexpected successes. A news reporter for the local newspaper came along. Turns out that it was the first time she'd ever ridden in traffic, and so now we have a journalist who sees things from a biker's perspective. She wrote a few columns about becoming a new rider and is interested in making this part of her lifestyle. There's good TV news coverage because there's action shots, and we hand them this kind of map and they can meet us along the way and photograph the mayor as he rolls along. City council people come particularly when we tell them that we'll be riding through their districts to talk about road conditions and safety. We also get to highlight problems, and here we're out on the road in a neighborhood talking about an unbuilt section of the plan, or talking about where transportation conflicts arise in different neighborhoods. And a surprise to us, one outcome is that the newly formed neighborhood associations in La Crosse started to use their influence in city politics to advocate for the bike and ped facilities that are in the Bike Ped Master Plan. Neighborhood associations here are fairly new. They're actually somewhat progressive, and the mayor set up a program where new neighborhood associations would have some decision-making prioritization over about $375,000 for each of them. To the surprise of the city departments, who somehow thought neighborhoods would be spending this on flowers and beautification, the associations almost all want to dedicate these funds to RFBs and pedestrian islands and improved signage for pedestrian and bikes. And they use the master plan, and here it is a map from the plan on the left, to identify uncompleted projects in their neighborhood. And here's a neighborhood leader on our bike tour pointing out a problem pedestrian crossing that they wanted to address. And that ride has the mayor and council and local police out with it. So in conclusion, we've had some political developments this spring 2017, that might open up the possibility of increased investment in sustainable transportation. Basically, lack of road fronting locally at the state level means that politicians are looking for alternatives to decrease traffic rather than building new roads, because it's not a possibility. And because of collaborations like this, we have a broader coalition of non-cyclists who think about a bikeable, walkable city as a desirable possibility. People in the Convention and Visitors Bureau and people in neighborhood associations who do not ride themselves are increasingly aware of the desirability of a bikeable, walkable, sustainable transportation city. So I think this kind of works. The volunteers have to invest in other people's goals, but in return, they'll invest in yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. It's really an interesting story, the way the community has come together with people who walk, people who ride bicycles, and people who really don't come to bicycling from a bicyclist perspective, as neighborhood associations, etc. So thank you for sharing your ideas. And if anyone has any questions, please do feel free to put them in the chat box. Now I'd like to introduce to you Heather Gentry. She's the founder and president of the Green Bay Bicycle Collective, a nonprofit bike group serving Greater Green Bay in its 6th year. She's a member of the, and I may not say this right, Alouez Bike and Ped Committee, which is with a newly approved bike ped village plan. She's a vintage bike enthusiast. Her everyday ride is a 1984 Cannondale, mother of 2 small children that she is usually pulling behind herself on a bike trailer, and the recent recipient of the Green Bay's Person of the Year for her efforts in bike and pedestrian advocacy. So welcome, Heather, and I am going to switch the screen to you.
Thank you for having me. This is really exciting. So I guess I put together a little presentation to kind of explain how we, oh, sure. Can you see my screen?
I don't see it yet.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're
there. Now I see it.
I see it.
There we go. Yeah, so I'm a pretty new advocate on the scene here, and last year, 2016, we had a phenomenal year. So I guess I'm just going to kind of explain how we were so successful last year. We have a pretty good group of cyclists in the city, but no one was really talking to each other and collaborating. And I think that was one of our largest successes, is we all found each other and formed a core group of people, and we were able to get our resources all together and work with officials. So here on the screen right now, you can see some of our wins, I guess you could say. We initially requested the city to form a bicycle and pedestrian committee because we didn't have one, and they didn't really like the idea of forming another committee because there were already too many. So we said, okay, well, let's just rename the Traffic Commission, because they are the ones who take these kind of issues, and you'll see how that worked out even better than just renaming it. There's a major reconstruction effort that will be starting next year on the north side of Webster, which is a very busy corridor in Green Bay, and there were no bike lanes. There were wide outside lanes, but no bike lanes, and we were able to convince the city that they needed to add the 5-foot lane, so we won that one. The Fox River Trail, 16 going on 17 years old, has never been maintained in winter, and that was a tough one, but after a full year of advocating, we actually got that one turned over. Last year, I submitted the bicycle-friendly community application on behalf of the city of Green Bay, and with all of the efforts from the city officials, we were able to get an honorable mention, so that's a start. Safe Routes to School was awarded to the public schools, and we'll be able to use that to our advantage when increasing bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. The Share and Be Aware campaign is set to launch in May, which we're really excited about, because in Green Bay, car is king, and we want people to be a little more aware of their surroundings. We became an official chapter of the Wisconsin Bicycle Federation, and we are incredibly excited about that. And we started some critical mass rides last year. Started out with 40 people attending them, and now we're up to 170. And then Alloway just approved its first bike and ped plan. I'm on the committee for that, and we got it passed just 2 weeks ago. And now Green Bay is finally drafting their first standalone bike and ped plan. So to kind of give you an idea of how we started, we're just a group of bike enthusiasts, and like Carolyn said, we like the vintage bikes. Not many of us have road bikes, so we would just like to cruise around together, and we didn't see much of that going around. So we said, well, how can we get more people involved? How can we grow as a bike club? We called ourselves the Slow Riders at the time, and we decided to just start a web page, a blog. And we called ourselves the Collective because we wanted to include everybody, not just, friends in our inner circle. And this was our first post. Nothing too fancy. It was just like, hey, we're here and we want to discuss bikes with you and ride. after that, we got more interest from people, so we just started creating flyers, getting them out there, putting them on the blog, and then we started a Facebook page, and that really expanded our reach. So these are just some of the rides that we've hosted over the years, a lot of fun ones, some fish fry rides, bike and movie nights, and our bike banquet, which I'll talk about later. So we started with the blog. When people we didn't know showed up to these rides, we'd ask them, hey, why don't you give us your email, and then we'll let you know about more rides if they weren't on Facebook or whatnot. And then just to get our name out there, we made stickers, patches, shirts, all that fun stuff, and we would just hand them out just to let people know who we were. On the right side of the screen, you'll see all those bikes. That is our bike bash to celebrate vintage bikes and all sorts of different kinds of bikes, and people from all over set up, and we have a competition to win these bronze pedal awards you see in the front. So then we were pretty happy doing that for 4 years, just hosting rides, and people would just expand, and we had a great group of riders. But we're just like, well, who's in charge in the city of making decisions? We don't have a whole lot of bicycle infrastructure. I think the latest stat was less than 10%, much less than 10%, maybe like 7% of our roads you could call bicycle friendly. So the vice president of the Bike Collective and I, Mark, we went to the Bike Summit in Appleton in November, and we were just blown away. We were just blown away about what was going on around the state. All these other communities were just light years ahead of us, and we were just kind of deflated. We couldn't understand that. It just, like, what do we do? And so we came back to Green Bay and found out nobody was really advocating, no one was really doing much with the city. So then we started attending some public meetings, and the first one that we found out about was the Highway 57 Riverside Drive reconstruction. The majority of that reconstruction is in Alloway, and I'm an Alloway resident, so I had a little more pull when I went to the board to talk to them about that. The DOT is in charge of this project, but Alloway had the power to say yay or nay to bike lanes on that road. And parallel to that, along the river there, is the Fox River Trail. So on our blog and on our Facebook page, we really wanted to get some support for bike lanes on Riverside Drive. It is a major corridor connecting Green Bay and De Pere. And the Fox River Trail is fantastic, but it's a recreational trail. So we thought bike lanes would just be fantastic. Just, it's a recreational trail. It's not really it's not a commuter trail. It's too busy. So this is one of the things that we did. We just put up a grassroots effort campaign, and we understand that in the age of information, there's just too much information out there. So we just made it really quick and painless, just trying to get the main ideas out there for people, and they could just write a letter, email, and contact their local representatives. It was a pretty good campaign. There was a lot of response, but the Village of Alloway still voted no, and mostly because there was an issue of land acquisition in people's front yards along the river, and they hardly have any front yards as it is, so they didn't want to take any more from them. And we really put a lot of effort into this, so we felt a little defeated. However, if you see, the then president of the village board said it's too dangerous, and we have a perfectly nice trail on the river. That comment right there would come back to bite him, because we held him to that. We said, okay, we do have a perfectly nice trail. You don't plow it in the winter. So we'll get to that in a second. After that, we were just kind of upset with the fact that we had lost this, and wanted to know what resources were out there. So I called the Bike Fed and actually got Mr. Chislevich on the phone, and he knows our mayor, Mayor Schmidt, and said, hey, why don't I come up and we can have a meeting, we can just kind of talk about these things. So we waited a little while because we wanted to get our ducks in a row and see what do we really need. So we attended an Active Communities Alliance that really did not discuss bike issues at all. it was mostly running and pedestrian issues, and we brought the bicycle perspective to the table, and we created a priority list. And one thing I should tell you is that Green Bay does not have a bike and ped plan, which we were floored. We couldn't believe that. No bike and ped plan for the third largest city in the state. They use the county plan, and we explained to them, you don't want the same bike and ped plan for 200,000 people that you use for a town of 10,000, two different animals. So we asked for that. We asked for the formation of a bike and ped committee, which, you know, they didn't like the idea of that. We thought there should be more PSAs on bike and ped safety. We need to plow the river, or plow the Fox River Trail to have that interconnectivity, and connect all the multi-use trails that we have, because we have a bunch of them, they're just kind of scattered and they don't really go anywhere. And we would like to see our main arterials have bicycle infrastructure so people can get from point A to point B more easily. We brought that to the mayor, and he liked the majority of it except for the formation of a committee. So then we spoke with some local alderpersons and discussed changing the name of the traffic commission, which actually worked out better, worked out more in our favor. Because at first they're like, okay, yeah, you can change the name, but you also have to, what they didn't think about at first was that you also have to change the code, the municipal code describing what they do. So now they legally have to take on these issues. So that was a big win, and we felt pretty great about that. So we got our critical mass rides, more people were involved. This was on the front page of the Green Bay Press Gazette. Those are my neighbors in the front, actually, and it really brought to the forefront bicycle and pedestrian issues. So then we tackled the North Webster Avenue reconstruction. That was a little harder to do because our director of public works, he already had the plans pretty much set and wasn't ready to just change them because we asked to. He needed a little more convincing. So we ended up bringing about 70 people to the city council meeting in the galley and really made a case for that, for the fact that, you know, we don't have enough bicycle infrastructure, and people really do use bikes around here to get to work and from point A to point B. I think the turning point of the meeting, we were there from 7 p.m. until 11:30 that night. The turning point, I think, was one of the council members asked where we were on a list of bicycle-friendly cities in Wisconsin, and the Bike Fed had just posted their top 13 bicycle-friendly communities in Wisconsin, and we weren't even on the list. We're still not on the list. And you could hear just hear the room. It just grew so quiet. So that was a big turning point. And you can see right there on the screen, we only got one no vote on that. So we were pretty excited about that, and actually had a ride in front of City Hall. Had a good group of about 80 people there. So then we turned our sights to the Fox River Trail. We had been advocating, you know, since late 2015, and it took us quite some time, but we really pushed on this campaign with the help of the Bike Fed giving us kind of tips and how to approach people. We started a grassroots campaign with letters to everybody, the county, De Pere, and Green Bay, because those two right there, those are the dominoes that we needed to fall. Because Alloway said no to our bike lanes on Riverside Drive, they conceded and let us, and said that they would plow their portion of the Fox River Trail, which is about 3.5 miles. And they kind of laughed at us because it went nowhere. It was just in the middle, because Green Bay didn't plow their portion and De Pere didn't plow their portion, so it was just in the middle. But you'll see that it was very popular, and it actually, the public was really excited about having that, so then they put pressure on De Pere and Green Bay for us. And another thing that helped us in that case was that originally the trail was funded by the DOT, and when the DOT invests in those kind of projects, it's known that you're supposed to maintain those year-round. And the county hadn't done it, not since it started. So they didn't really want that information getting out either. So it was a multi-community deal with Green Bay, Alloway, De Pere, and the county. So they all worked together, and it ended up costing them a lot less to plow the river, or plow the Fox River Trail. We stayed active up until the very end, and you can see how nice and clear that trail is. So that's it for now.
Thank you, Heather. That's really an exciting story, truly a grassroots effort, people who want to ride bikes and want to make it available for the community. I do have a question for you. It comes from Chelsea. She said her city has a parking and traffic committee and a bike pedestrian committee, and she wonders if you would advise that, them to combine the two.
To combine the traffic committee and the bike and ped committee?
Right.
If you have, let's see, so the bike and ped committee and the traffic committee, yeah, because then maybe if you could get more sympathetic bike and ped people into the traffic committee, then you would have more people on your side when you bring issues to them. I think, you know what, I would try that, because I know in Ashwaubenon they had their own bike and ped committee, and at first they had a lot of momentum, but then they kind of fell to the wayside and people forgot about them, and then they really didn't have any power.
All right.
So I would definitely try and combine them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I don't see any other questions now, but I do appreciate you sharing with us today. If you do have further questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. I'm going to take the screen back now, and I'd like to present Tony Giron. He works for the Wisconsin Bike Fed with some programs, and I'm going to ask Tony if you would please unmute yourself. And I don't know if you are going to share anything or not, so I will just have my screen on unless you tell me otherwise.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, so I don't have a presentation prepared because I'm filling in for one of my colleagues, Nicholas, who was going to give this presentation. But I will do my best to fill in and let you all know about Path to Platinum. And so Path to Platinum is a group, grassroots group that was started here in Milwaukee to improve biking. It's doing more than what we do here at the Bike Fed. We're actually a group that is very much community-led and working with the city to make sure that we can recommend specific infrastructure improvements. So the group got started about just over a year ago with different residents and professors from local universities, urban planning professors, and just people who are interested in improving biking to meet with different elected officials. So the first goal was to get Mayor Tom Barrett on board with our effort. And so before we were called Path to Platinum, we were actually called Path to Gold. So that's a part of the League of American Bicyclists standards to make our city, to bring our city up to the gold level, which we're currently at bronze. But when we had our meeting with the mayor, he actually asked us to go for platinum, which is the highest level. So we were excited about that, but also wanted to make sure that it wasn't just lip service and that the mayor would keep his promise to help us raise our standard here in Milwaukee. So a big part of our goal as the Path to Platinum is to engage all of the Milwaukee communities and advocate for better biking and safer streets for everybody. So throughout the course of last year, we were very present at lots of different events. We would be at the Ciclovia events, different street festivals. We have an event called Doors Open where people come through and get to see what's going on in the city and visit different architectural sites. And so through all of these events, we were able to gather lots of community information on how they envisioned a better city for biking. And we compiled all of that info. We actually sent out a survey where we got 900 respondents, and 850 of those were Milwaukee residents. And through that survey, we were able to compile a list of recommendations, which we are currently working on now. And that list of recommendations includes recommendations that are in the city's bike plan and even the previous 2 bike plans. So a lot of those recommendations in the city's own plans were not implemented. So we're just making sure that the city does take note that, that we are aware that they have not, upheld their promise to improve certain infrastructures that they said they would. So as a group, we are trying to bring more residents to our cause so that we can then have meetings with individual elected officials. So right now we're also compiling different aldermanic district reports where we have the recommendations from the city's bike plan, the recommendations from our surveys, and all of those together, with all that together, we're gonna have meetings with the alders and get them on board with our mission so that then they can in turn push the Department of Public Works and the mayor and all of our city engineers to have bike infrastructure be a priority for them. So that's been a whole year in the works, and that's pretty much where we're at right now. If
Tony,
there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Tony, can you share just a little bit about some of the work that you did with 5321 Connect?
Sure. So Connect 53212 is the name that we gave. The federal term is Smart Trips, and it's a local, we call it like a targeted marketing program, but that's just a fancy way of saying that we encourage walking, biking, and busing in a specific area. So our zone was the 53212 zip code in Milwaukee, and which is a very segregated, racially and economically segregated zip code within the city. And it included a lot of canvassing. We found that the best way to reach people was to meet them at their front door. So myself and a team of 4 community liaisons would go out every day and knock on doors and talk to people about how they get around and offer them free information about walking, biking, and busing. We would also put on lots of different rides and walks and just different events to kind of build up the biking and walking community in that area.
And then can you also talk about the wayfinding project, how that came together?
Sure. So as part of Connect 53212, we wanted to be very visible on the streets. So not just with having us, the staff, be out and about and being at as many events as possible. We wanted to have some sort of at least semi-permanent way to engage people. So we started a wayfinding sign project, which placed 50 different signs throughout the zip code that pointed people to different parks and trails throughout the zip code. So the signs would have, like the little walking person and a bicycle with an arrow pointing to a park or trail, and it tells you how many minutes rather than distance that it would take you to get to any of those locations. And so that was pretty well received. We still, it's a good way to continue to be engaged with residents, even though the program is not currently around anymore. It was just a 3-year program, and it just ended this past December. But we're still able to keep in touch with people through the wayfinding project, and we still have our social media groups up.
Thank you so much, and thank you for filling in at the last moment. Does
No
anybody
problem.
have any more questions for any of our presenters? If you do, please type it in or even unmute and ask is fine as well. I'll be sharing a link of a video from James today and also another quite interesting newsletter this afternoon. So if we have nothing else today, I appreciate everybody taking the time to learn about doing some advocacy in their own communities. It seems as if getting out and creating some enthusiasm around walking and bicycling and connecting with others as well as elected officials really does help to create some momentum. So please feel free to send an email with any questions or comments, and I will be sure to follow up with some resources. And thank you to all of our presenters, and have a good afternoon.
Smart Trips program.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was there a
question
question?
about the Smart Trips program.
Go ahead.
Was there any evaluation that showed the effectiveness of the Smart Trips program?
Yes, we had a pre-survey and post-survey. So we found that we started off with 53% of residents in the zip code drove a single occupant vehicle as their main form of transportation. And by the end of the program, it was down to 38%. And so we also increased walking by 6% and biking way more by like 12%. And then we also kept track of that, not just with surveys, but we also did bike and pedestrian counts 3 different times of the summer each year. And those also showed an increase.
That's pretty good if you're able to maintain it. Congratulations.
Definitely. Thank you.
I'd also like you to encourage you to try to make it to our bike summit in Milwaukee. Tony is organizing that, and there should be some really interesting conversations there as well.
Yeah, thanks for the plug. We have a really awesome list of presenters. I'm very excited to have gotten such a great response from all the presenters, and we'll be sending out an agenda probably beginning of next week so that you can see who's coming and what they're presenting on.
And that's on May 5th, is that correct, or is it May 4th? May 4th?
Thursday, May 4th.
May 4th in Milwaukee. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you once again to all of our participants and the presenters as well. Have a great afternoon.